Hey, I'm Terrence Slade and welcome back. In this particular video, we're going to hop right into it. But as I mentioned in the last video where we talked about how the NAR or the National Association of Realtors are coming after, or they lost a battle and they had to pay they settled on a $418 million fine, which is going to truly shake up the market for buyers and sellers. In this particular one, we're going to show you how they're winning now against investors and wholesalers. So if you are a wholesaler, this is directly aimed at you. This is a law that they just got passed in Iowa. So I'm just telling you right now, and it's the Iowa House Bill 2394. And so I want to jump right into that, show you what we're talking about on that video. We'll bring you right over here to the screen, let you see exactly what they're doing. We'll take you right through the law, show you exactly what they did and how it's going to directly, I feel, change everything that it comes to wholesaling. Because I think once this gets brought into law, it should take effect July 24th this year. And once that goes into effect, I do believe there's going to be other states that will be adopting this. So this may be the end of wholesaling as you know it. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into this. So this here is the House bill in Iowa, 2394. And we're going to run through this relatively quickly, so don't feel like this is going to be a long video. But I just want to hit the kind of the meat and potatoes. The bill was actually very short, so but it was very conclusive. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this a little bit and just kind of show you. And this is the first part here. I want to show you is kind of the timeline, just how motivated they are. So literally, this bill was introduced here on February 8th of this year. It literally passed the House on the 19th of February, and it eventually made its way over to, that was in the House, so it passed the House. Then it was immediately brought over to the Senate, and it looks like here it passed the Senate. It was voted on here on March 4th. So literally almost about a month later, actually almost a month just after it was even introduced, it has already passed both houses and already passed. And so, and it is set to, again, go into law once it's signed by the governor. It'll be in law here. And I'm going to show you exactly how, I'm going to take you right to the law and show you exactly what they wrote out for wholesalers and how they define it. And basically, they're going to try to squash wholesaling. All right, guys. So this here was the legislation that was actually adopted. I'm actually going to just show it to you. I'm going to read it to you, but I'm actually going to show it to you real quick because it's very short and to the point here. So you can see, I tried to zoom in for you, so hopefully you can actually see all that. But if not, I'm going to read it back to you anyway. But anyhow, Section B, what is basically they define what wholesaler is. And in this instance, it means a licensee or a person represented by a licensee who holds an equitable interest, but not a legal title in a residential property for the purpose of selling an equitable interest to a buyer. So let's start here. First part, they notice you got to be licensed. So my opinion, they're probably going to tell you this is pointing toward becoming an agent. Probably in most, I'm doubting they're going to probably create a whole new thing. Anything's possible. But I'm guessing license, they're going to, easiest thing, roll it right into becoming a realtor. And now you're going to be a licensed realtor to actually do any type of wholesaling. Or in this case, broker or an agent. Notice how they said a lease licensee or represented by a licensee. So effectively an agent represented by a broker. At least that's my interpretation of that, for an equitable interest. And so when they talk about equitable interest, if you're wholesaling, you know exactly what that means. That just means literally you got a contract to buy a property that gives you equitable interest. And then what do? We take that property, we take that equitable interest and we go sell it. And so when we go sell that contract to another buyer, they're saying, you're not going to be able to do that anymore, not without a license. All right, so in this next section here, they even define what is even wholesaling. So wholesaling means the practice of a wholesaler entering into an assignable contract with an owner of a residential property for the purposes of marketing and selling the equitable interest of a residential property to another person. So we just defined that. We just went over that. So we know what wholesaling is. A person must be licensed as a real estate broker under this chapter or be represented by a real estate broker licensed under this chapter to engage in the act of wholesaling. So again, yes, going back to being a realtor and being a licensed one here, and or being represented underneath a broker. So to me means agent. So unless they're going to have some kind of other options there, which I doubt it, but that's going to be what they're looking at here. So you're going to have some kind of representation there to do wholesaling. And moving right along to section 3, a wholesaler shall disclose all of the following information in writing to all parties to a wholesaling transaction prior to executing a contract to purchase or convey equitable interest to a buyer or other entity. The legal entities of all parties to the wholesaling transaction, the explanation of the wholesaling process, including but not limited to disclosure that the wholesaler holds the equitable interest in a residential property that is the subject of the transaction and may not be able to convey title to the property. So what are they pretty much saying here? They're pretty much telling you got to tell the AB side, that's your selling side. So your seller. So you got to tell them that you are wholesaling this transaction. You got to be upfront with that and let them know of that. On the back end, you have your buyer. You need to tell your buyer, I'm wholesaling this transaction and I may not be able to convey marketable title. Now, ultimately for us or for me, I always put that into my agreements anyway, so they know that my buyer always knows that I'm wholesaling the transaction if that's what I'm going to be doing. So they understand that I may not be able to convey that title, but they're wanting you to make sure you have it clear on both sides, the A and the B side. Now, in this next section here, they throw in a little extra graininess in here where they're telling you a wholesaler shall provide a copy of an executed agency agreement to all parties to a wholesale transaction prior to executing a contract to purchase or convey equitable interest to a buyer or another entity. So to me, what are they saying? Again, this is my opinion. You should provide a copy of an executed agency agreement. So this tells me that there's going to be some kind of paperwork that's going to say that I am wholesaling this transaction. And apparently, according to them, you need to do this prior to even signing the seller agreement or even signing a buyer agreement. You need to let both parties know, here's the agreement, and there's going to be a document. If you have my opinion, they're probably going to put some signatures on it. So they're probably going to make sure you sign it and probably date it so they know that each party knew, at least on the day of or prior to, that they knew that you were wholesaling this transaction. So that's and then letting them know that you have your equitable interest or you plan on wholesaling this transaction. So again, that's just my opinion. This is what they're doing to try to short circuit wholesaling as a whole. When I get to the end, I'm going to give you my little theory on how they're going to and how all this is going to tie in. And so in these last two sections, they pretty much make it clear on what these penalties are going to be. So notwithstanding the provisions to the contrary contained in the contract executed pursuant to this subsection, if a wholesaler fails to comply with the disclosure requirements under the paragraph A, the seller or buyer may cancel the contract at any time prior to the closing of the sale of the residential property without penalty and retain any earnest money paid by the wholesaler. So in summary, if you do not disclose or make them sign that document, or you make them sign that document after the fact, because they made it clear you need to give them that document. I'm going to assume it's going to be a document. You're going to let that seller know upfront that you're wholesaling this transaction, and you need to explain to them what wholesaling is. And so if you don't do that upfront, then they're saying that if the buyer, and we all know buyers get real squirrely for just any random reason, they're saying that this person gets squirrely at the end. And if you did not tell them that this was a wholesale transaction and you didn't disclose it, you didn't provide them the paperwork, then they can literally cancel this transaction and hold your and take your earnest money. Now, most of us, if you're smart, you're not putting up earnest money until after due diligence anyway, or if at all, just to be honest with you. Or at very minimum, most of us are only putting up maybe $100. But if you don't want to lose your $100, then you're going to need to disclose that you are an agent and that you have the ability to, that you're going to be wholesaling this transaction. And so jumping into the last section here, and let's go ahead and highlight this section here real quick, just so we have that there. An individual engaged in wholesaling in violation of this section shall be subject to a civil penalty up to the greater of $10,000 or 10% of the sale price of each residential property for which the individual engaged in wholesaling in violation of this section. So the previous section just told you what the penalty was for the seller. They can retain that earnest money from you. And then on the opposite end, when it comes to the state, they're saying if they find out that you were engaging in wholesaling and you didn't follow the rules, well, then think of it this way: any property under $10,000, under $100,000, is going to be a $10,000 fine. It's 10%. So at least, so even if it's a $50,000 transaction, you're paying $10,000. If it's $100,000, you're paying $10,000. So that's going to be the penalty here. Now, where obviously, so that's a pretty significant fee, and that gets higher. So let's assume that this was a $300,000 home that you were looking to wholesale. That's a $30,000 fine just off top. So they're making it real severe in the penalties if you get caught. In most states, obviously, it's usually nothing like this, but in this case, they're doing this, and that's going to be the penalty. Now, in my opinion, when I say they're going to end, when I say wholesaling, I know typically speaking, most of our measures to get around a lot of this is going to be the double close. But if you remember back in the first, they said your equitable interest. Now, in my opinion, that's covering double closing as well, because when you put the property under contract, that is your equitable interest. And then even if you go into a double close, that's you selling your equitable interest to another party on the same day. So that's just my opinion. Someone's probably going to get caught and get sued and take them to court to probably figure out how this is going to be truly played out through court systems. But just know that is what they're planning right now. Now, my opinion, again, when it comes to wholesaling and what I think the remedies might be here, I'm going to say first one is likely still going to be is still doing a double close. And I know I just kind of contradicted myself there. Is still doing a double close or a long-tailed double close. So meaning I would suggest that, your traditional transactional lender that will literally do everything same day, same transaction type thing is probably going to be dead. However, maybe if you have a transaction lender that's willing to give you maybe either a day, a couple days, maybe a week. They haven't defined how long this term needs to be. I'm going to guess you just need to close and allow that transaction to settle that day. And even if you sold it a day later, I think you probably can subvert that rule. But again, that's just my opinion there. So I think that's going to be one of them. So now again, that might be 24 hours. You might need to hold it for a whole month. Who knows? With that being said, I'm going to say another solution is going to be is if you're not familiar with wholesaling might be another option here for getting around this law. And that's basically you're buying it as an investor. You're getting in that property, cleaning it up, maybe a little carpet, maybe a little paint, but you're just basically getting up, doing a kind of a clean out, getting it ready to be on the market, and then selling it that way. I think you should be fine there. And then lastly, if you're doing novations, I think that's going to be fine for you as well. And again, I think, but that's just my opinion. So if you don't know novations, you might want to learn that. So I think novations is going to be an option to get around to you. But all I'm saying is you see exactly how fast this just happened through. It literally was inside of 1 month. It went from House to the Senate and passed. And so I think that what you're going to do is other states are going to see that and they're going to adopt this. And if that's the case, this is literally going to, as you were wholesaling traditionally, this is going to end all of that. So that's just my opinion. I would love to hear your feedback on it. Please share your feedback. Tell me what you think on this ruling. And I do think that if you're not getting some more skill sets, this may be the end of you in real estate. So, hey, that's all for me. Love to hear your feedback. Tell me what you think. Yo, almost forgot. So, bonus material. So, when I mentioned earlier that the NAR is coming after you, meaning wholesalers. Um, just look at this right here. And this was on statista.com. You'll see now, this is leading lobbyist spenders in the United States in 2023. Look who number 2 is on that list, the National Association of Realtors, the NAR. And they spent over 50, and this is measured in millions. So this is 52.4 million dollars was literally spent last year lobbying. So they're literally second and only behind the U.S. U.S. Chambers of Commerce. They're spending more money than hospitals and insurance companies. Why do you think they're doing that? Every wholesale transaction that you do is a deal that the realtor did not get to list and helping homeowners sell with a realtor, which means what? That means realtors aren't getting commissions, which means that's money that's not being paid to their brokers, which is money that's not being paid to the NAR. Just telling you, man, you think I'm playing, that's real. They're spending a ton of money coming down the court. So I'm just telling you. So they're trying to figure out how to stop this, and they're trying to figure out how to stop this in every mean fashion possible. So get your skills up, learn a new skill, because it's likely going to happen. They're going to figure out a way to figure out how to shut wholesaling down, and how to get us out of this loop, or at the bare minimum, make it extremely uncomfortable or difficult for you to skirt their laws and rules. So understand, man, it's coming down the pipe. You see the numbers right here. That's what they're talking about. They're coming after you. So get out of wholesaling, learn the skill.